I'm Rabbi, as you all are coming in, I'm Rabbi Michael Birnholz from Temple Beth Shalom in Vero Beach, Florida. And one of the people who helped organize this rather incredible evening that we are putting together. We have 14 rabbis who are here to help observe Tisha B'Av with all of us. That are from congregations all over the country and from the Caribbean and from all ends of the earth. We had over 125 registrations. Plus, there are a number of us from in various places that are gathered with our congregants in our sanctuaries or social halls or meeting rooms. That's pretty extraordinary as well. And part of this is, these are collaborations that go back to 2020 when we had the beginnings of the pandemic. Rabbi Sarah Zober in Reno, Nevada said, can we do a Tikkun Leil Shavuot, a teaching for Shavuot, where we use Zoom, and even though we can't get together in person, we can find ways of gathering using Zoom. We've been able to expand that. We've had programs for Hanukkah. We've had programs on the High Holy Days. We've had programs on Purim.
Are you okay?
And this is our second or third time we've gathered for Tisha B'Av like this. It's really pretty extraordinary, and just a testament to the power of small congregations able to participate together. So again, as you come in, if you want to, in the chat, if you want to let us know where you are from, that is wonderful. It is incredible that we have this chance to gather together, and just give us a few minutes to welcome everybody in. And also, please do go ahead and mute your audio, because otherwise it will then come back and cover all of our participants. And if you turn on your chat, you will see the rather extraordinary list of people that are logging in for this, and where everybody is from. I also would like to point out, just so you realize how powerful these collaborations are, of the 14 rabbis that are here, I was the one that said, let's do this. I only have met 2 or 3 of my colleagues actually in person. Many of them are just folks that we have connected with through Zoom and various other parts of the rabbi world. But for example, Rabbi Smiley, who is in Baton Rouge, which was one of my old stomping grounds. I'm from Jackson, Mississippi. She had posted in a rabbi space and said, I have congregants who are going to India. They have a daughter who's looking for bat mitzvah, and I have my oldest child is about to leave to go to India, and we were able to connect. This becomes really incredible community, that even though we are separated by lots of space, we have the opportunity to gather in time in this way, in this space, to be able to learn together, to be able to create Jewish community together, to create community together. And so as you see these lists of where folks are from, you never know what kind of Jewish geography you are going to be able to do. And so it is truly wonderful as folks are logging on, and thank you to my colleagues who are helping with the waiting room. So 2 other things as we are gathering. There is going to be, in the month of Elul, there will be some reflections on Mondays and Thursdays at noon Eastern, with different rabbi, 20-minute meeting each on Monday and 20-minute on Thursday through the 4 weeks of the month of Elul. And then we'll also be gathering for some different things around Hanukkah. If you have other ideas, you can certainly talk to your rabbi that can share it with our rabbis collaboration group, and you never know what incredible ideas we can generate. There have been introduction to Judaism classes and all sorts of different adult learning. And the last big thank you I want to say is to the Union for Reform Judaism. This is our congregations and your clergy who's been putting this together, but we have been getting incredible support from the Union for Reform Judaism. They immediately stepped up as this is starting to get bigger and bigger. They have helped with registration. They are helping with the communication. So this, if anybody says, why is my congregation part of the Union for Reform Judaism? This is why. They are able to support us and our congregations in amazing ways to enable us to gather here in this space. And so thank you to Julie Lambert, who just posted in the chat the registration for that Elul series. That is absolutely wonderful. So for much of the time, you're probably going to want to be in speaker view. That will allow you to see the particular rabbi and what they are offering and teaching. We will also be hearing the chanting of the book of Echa, of Lamentations, and by some of our different colleagues as well. And so if you are, the best way to do this is in speaker view, so you'll be able to see us up close and personal. And with that, I think it is just after 8. If more people come in, it will be wonderful that they join us. But here I sit, I'm just going to move one thing out of my way. And as I stand before you on this night of Tisha B'Av, so here the sun in Vero Beach, I'm on the east coast of Florida. The sun is starting to set, and here we are finding ourselves on this day of incredible mourning and loss. We know it's the destruction of the 2 temples, it's the expulsion from Spain, it's the account of the spies. We'll hear each of those little pieces of history. And if you know, in Jewish tradition, when we lose someone we love, when the fabric of life is torn, we actually tear a piece of fabric. It's our way of feeling pain. Part of what we like to do as humans is very often we like to start fixing as soon as that tear appears, already starting to stitch it up. Tisha, I compare it to Shabbat. Shabbat is 6 days we work, and on 7th day we practice getting some rest, of stopping ourselves, of letting ourselves pause. Tisha B'Av is similar, that we go through life and so often we want to start repairing immediately, and on Tisha B'Av we stop. And we take a day, 25 hours. Some of us fast, some of us say lamentations, some of us study, some of us sit on low stools. We all find different ways of stopping to honor and to remember, to feel the power of these losses. And this is just an incredible day to feel these moments. We'll hear from many of my colleagues. One of the other things that is going on that's extraordinary is that even as we are stopping for this day of Tisha B'Av, even as we are stopping for this day of loss and destruction in the life of the people of Israel and the land of Israel, we're watching an extraordinary political situation in the state of Israel. We're seeing lots of division, lots of fear, lots of polarization on each side. As we gather here, and there are people that are probably on each side of this discussion and debate. There are people that have never been to Israel, and there are people that are probably ready to go and protest. There are all sorts of people that are gathered here with us. As we are here on this Tisha B'Av, we will not solve the challenges of modern Israel, but we can stop for a moment and offer some silence for each of us to find a way of sending our prayers before we start this day of loss and memory, to send a prayer to the state of Israel, to the people of Israel, to the land of Israel, so that it can, a prayer of Shalom, so it can find a place of being in wholeness, harmony, and peace. So I ask you before we start our Tisha B'Av program to stop and take a moment of silence to send our prayers to the people and to the state, to the land of Israel. So we gather here on this night to honor and remember the calamities of our people. I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Siroty, who is in Knoxville, Tennessee, and give me just a moment to go and pull up the text for you.
I am Rabbi Raina Siroty, and I will be chanting Eicha, chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Eicha Yashva Vadar Hayir Rabbatiam Hayata Kamana Rabati Vagoim Sarati Bamedinot Hayata Lamas Bacho Tivke Balayla Vedimata Alechea in Lamenachem Mekohavecha Orecha Bakebudava Ayula Leoyavim Daleta Yehuda Meoni Umerov Avoda Yasheva Vagoyim Vomatzea Manoach Kerodefecha Hesiguha Ben HaMetzorim Darchei Tzion Avelot Mebili Da'emoed Olarecha Shomemim Ohaneha Nenachim Betulotecha Negot Vehi Morla.
Thank you. So, I'm Rabbi Alicia Harris. I'm the rabbi at Congregation Shir Tikvah in Troy, Michigan. I feel like I usually just say in Troy, people know, but I'm realizing there are people from all over it seems like the North America around here. So I am going to share my screen now and give you just a thought or two about what I've been thinking about as I've been preparing for this fast day. Everybody see me? You're cool? Looks good. All right. So Eicha means how. You might also read it without the vowels. Ayeka, where are you? The people are crying out. And my question is, they're crying out. We talk about this day as the day of the destruction of the first and second temple. So as progressive Jews, how do we relate to that? Things are, we look at the Messiah a little differently. We look at the way in which we think about our ability to rebuild a little differently. We look at our communities, we call them temples instead of, this idea of we are in the place where we're supposed to be. So how do we then relate to this idea of Eicha? So Eicha or Ayeka, how? God, how could you let this happen? Where are you? And as Rabbi Birnholz said earlier, we know what it's like to mourn. Jews are really good at mourning. It is the thing that I think, we do the best at. And so I guess my question is then, how do I respond to this idea of if we're supposed to be in mourning for the temple, but I don't really relate to the temple? So this is what I came up with. And by I mean the sages. Like I just found the resources. They came up with it. In Yoma, it talks about this idea that the second temple was destroyed due to the fact that there was wanton hatred, sinat chinam. We say that often, this idea of baseless hatred. We've heard that before, perhaps in a teaching somewhere, that the second temple was destroyed because this baseless hatred, this hatred of others with no explanation, is as severe as the transgressions of idol worship, forbidden sexual relationships, and bloodshed. So it makes me then think, what does it mean? What can we do now as Jews in this moment? How do we think about the prophets? How do we think about this text that allows us, that gives us the space to cry out? And what can we do about this idea of baseless hatred? So I wanted to share this experience with you that we just had at Shir Tikvah on Sunday evening. If you haven't seen the documentary, it's like a 40-minute documentary called 40 Days of Teshuvah. And it's the Inside Out Wisdom and Action Project. And they put together this incredible film about the 40 Days of Teshuvah that Yehuda Webster and other leaders of the movement organized for Black lives in 2020, thinking about mourning the people who were killed and about mourning the fact that we were having to have these protests and have these conversations. It's an incredibly moving piece of art. And if you have a chance, I invite all of your congregations to try to put something together for it. But he cited this text from Isaiah: cry out with a full throat without restraint, raise your voice like a ram's horn. Do not allow things to go quietly, right? Do not allow yourselves to be quiet about something that is wrong. So this 40 days of mourning that they put together in this film was all about asking, crying out, asking, how could you do this, God? Where are you? And what does it mean to be in relationship with a God that we're asking, where are you? If we are supposed to feel this feeling of God is here with us always. So as I think about this idea of baseless hatred and the things that we can do today and how we can look at this time period as a moment to reflect and sit with the things we are mourning in our society and the things we know we haven't done right by people, the things we know we need to change, the ways in which we as Jews get a chance to make a tikkun, to make a shift. This is a moment where we can take that, like amorphous idea of mourning for the temples and really applying it to what is brokenness and what is broken in our world and how can we fix it. And to me, even though I'm not necessarily, I love to lead with gratitude and of the message of hope, I think it allows us to reconnect to this piece of our text, this day that always seemed like somebody else was observing it. Because to me, we have the answers here. We can cry out, we can mourn, and we can act. So thank you everybody so much for being here. And thank you again, Rabbi Birnholz, and everybody for organizing. I'm grateful to be able to learn with you this evening.
Thank you.
Rabbi Korotkin, you should be ready to go.
I'm Rabbi Audrey Korotkin from Temple Beth Israel in Altoona, Pennsylvania. It's wonderful to see people from all over the country, and just an honor to be with all of these wonderful rabbis and all of you who have come together. I'm going to be reading from Echa chapter 2 and verses 1 through 2. Echa ya'if be'apo Adonai et bat Zion ishliich mishamayim eretz tiferet Yisrael v'lo zachar hadam raglav b'yom apo Bilach Adonai v'lo amo et kol nehod Yaakov charas bevrato mitzirei vat Yehuda higia va'aretz Chilel mamlacha v'sareha.
Hello, I'm Rabbi Natalie Shribman from Temple-Sinai in West Bloomfield, Michigan. Thank you all for being here. Just want to share my screen with you as well. I could have that privilege to be a co-host, to share my screen. I would love that. So, while that's being set up, I can share with you, thank you. I wanted to dive into some of the background of Lamentations. I know we've already sort of heard some of the text, but I wanted to share a little bit about the text. Sorry, just one second. All right. So as you might have realized, the text is quite sad, and it's fitting for this day of mourning. And so it's not traditional to offer a blessing because it is not necessarily a joyous time, and there's some conflict around offering a blessing for this. And so we also wonder why people would want to bless the mourning of the temple. That seems a little bit contradictory. And so we liken the reasoning behind offering a blessing or not offering a blessing to the ritual of circumcision. And with that same ritual, there is some conflict of, should I offer a blessing over this action that might hurt my child? It's a blessing to have a child, and they are potentially experiencing some sort of pain, just like we have in this holiday. And so sometimes we offer a Misha Berach for this holiday. Sometimes we offer a Shehachianu. We can also offer this blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher asanu asorei tikvah. We praise you, O God, sovereign of existence, who has made us captives of hope. And just to dive into what Lamentations is about, it is 5 separate poems or elegies that really lament what happened to the temple and talks about people suffering. And in the end, it does end on a positive note of hope. It is supposed to be written by the prophet Jeremiah, and it is universal in its depiction of human suffering in the aftermath of war. So I'm looking at chapter 1, verse 2, and the pronoun she is referring to the city of Jerusalem, where we are seeing Jerusalem has sort of been destroyed, and she is likened to a widow and is left behind. And there is no one who is supporting her. And so it's a very difficult time. And the people as well are in distress and are uncertain. And it really does show what the experience was when the temple was destroyed. And then if you go further on in that chapter, we see many different verses of misery and hardship and darkness and being sort of stuck in these chains. And then you skip 10 verses in that in chapter 3, and you can see that even though there was intense misery, there was still a little bit of hope. So we see in verse 21, but this do I call to mind, therefore I have hope. The kindness of God has not ended. God's mercies are not spent. They are renewed every morning. Ample is your grace. And so even in this really difficult time, there is still a moment of hope. And that can sort of help us find meaning in this intense holiday of sadness. We know that we experience sadness and suffering on our own, and yet we sometimes still have hope that things will get better. And we try to remember that in those dark times. And one piece of midrash that is offered with this text in mind is a king who marries a woman and offers her a generous dowry, a generous marriage contract. And then he goes off and leaves for a little bit. And her neighbors start to wonder, where is your husband? Why did he abandon you? You should go marry someone else. And she goes back to her marriage contract and rereads it and says, no, my husband's gonna come back and it'll be fine. And this goes on for several years. And then finally, the king indeed returns. And he too is amazed that she waited all these years for him to come back. And she says, well, I knew that you would come back. I had faith in you because of this document. And I knew that God would not lead me astray. And likewise, we see this with Tisha B'Av and with this holiday. Even if Israel had this time of destruction, God was still with them, and God will come back and things will be rebuilt in different ways. And Judaism will continue in these different facets that we see in our own modern day. So I want to emphasize that while we have a time of destruction that we're focusing on, there is a little bit of hope to hold on to and to remember that we can survive and look forward to the future. And I hope that you can have a meaningful holiday. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rabbi Rebecca Epstein from West End Temple in Neponsit, New York, and I will be reading from the first part of chapter 3 of the book of Eicha. Ani hagever ra'oni beshevet evrato otinahag vayolach choshech velo or ach biyashuv yahafoch yado kol hayom bila vesari ve'ori shiber atzmotai bana alai vayakach rosh utla'a b'machashakim hoshivani kamete olam.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rabbi Jeff Goldwasser from Temple-Sinai in Cranston, Rhode Island. And we're going to pick up on that piece of Eicha, the Book of Lamentations that we just heard chanted so beautifully. and want to reflect on the opening verse. Ani hagever ra'a oni. I am the man who has seen affliction. So the third chapter of the Book of Lamentations has this change in tone from the first two chapters. The first chapter described the destruction of Jerusalem from the abstract perspective of the city itself, the city personified. And the second chapter ventures into a philosophical, theological explanation for the suffering, why God has chosen to reject his altar. In the third chapter, though, the perspective shifts to that of a human eyewitness to the destruction. And according to tradition, this is the testimony of the prophet Jeremiah, describing the scene he saw and experienced in these short staccato verses that we just heard chanted. We have no reason not to believe that the account is a genuine eyewitness description of the suffering of war and destruction. It opens our hearts and allows us to experience the reality of suffering on a personal and emotional level. It reminds us this is real. Human beings actually endured this horrifying ordeal, an ordeal that was intentionally inflicted upon them by other human beings. It isn't a metaphor. It isn't theology. It's real. We're going to read a poem written by a witness of a horrifying destruction of the 20th century. In reading the poem, we can perhaps relate to the descriptions of suffering and Lamentations in more contemporary terms. We can also perhaps remember that modernity has in no way saved us from the sheer brutality and inhumanity we associate with ancient warfare. It's still very much with us. Now, I looked through lots of different poems from the 20th century. The 20th century is not lacking in any way in examples of genocide and other forms of mass destruction. But I chose for tonight this particular poem from an event in history that there's no way that we're not all aware of. So the poem is Let Us Be Midwives, an untold story of the atomic bombing. And it's written by Sadako Kurihara, translated by British scholar Richard Manier. Sadako Kurihara was a poet, writer, and peace activist who survived the Hiroshima bombing. Let Us Be Midwives was based on her experience in a shelter in the aftermath of the bombing. Night in the basement of a concrete structure now in ruins. Victims of the atomic bomb jammed the room. It was dark, not even a single candle. The smell of fresh blood, the stench of death, the closeness of sweaty people, the moans. From out of all that, lo and behold, a voice. The baby is coming. In that hellish basement, at that very moment, a young woman had gone into labor in the dark without a single match. What to do? People forgot their own pains, worried about her. And then, I'm a midwife. I'll help with the birth. The speaker, seriously injured herself, had been moaning only moments before. And so new life was born in the dark of that pit of hell. And so the midwife died before dawn, still bathed in blood. Let us be midwives. Let us be midwives, even if we lay down our own lives to do so. Now, I want to suggest that this poem, written in our own times, written in most of the lifetimes of the people here, can be for us something of a gateway to understand our reading of Eicha, the Book of Lamentations. Perhaps in reflecting on it, we can see Lamentations as not some distant ancient text from a very different time, but we can see that we have windows to it in our own time of the way that we have experienced being in a world where people can do outrageously terrible things to other human beings. And perhaps also the text gives us a way of seeing our own humanity in the experiences that are described in Lamentations, and seeing ourselves and understanding our own lives. I want to offer anyone who'd like to, if you'd like to unmute yourself and offer your reflections on how this poem speaks to you and your own understanding of what we're actually reading when we're reading the Book of Lamentations. Anyone? Will invite you to go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm Adrian Rosa from McAllen, Texas, and this may be a far reach a little bit, but one of my favorite poems, I can't remember the title, but it's by Dylan Thomas, and it talks about rage against the dying of the light. And in this context, I feel like in all the injustices in the world, all the horrible things, if you have to save somebody and you're dying, rage against that, not necessarily anger, but fight as hard as you can to push the darkness back, push back the injustices to save people. And I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever, but I hope does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you so much for that reflection. I think in a lot of ways, Tisha B'Av and the Book of Lamentations is a meditation on, as Dylan Thomas put it, raging against the dying of the light, that the world is filled with darkness, but our job as human beings isn't to just accept the darkness, but to do something about it. Judaism is the tradition that says that we are partners with God in bringing wholeness to a world that is fundamentally broken. It's our job as human beings to rage against the dying of the light and to bring light in where there is darkness. Thank you so much for that reflection. We have time maybe just for one other person. Is anyone else like to offer some thoughts on reflecting on this poem of the 20th century and what it might teach us about Tisha B'Av?
Good evening, Rabbi. This is Joe Pendleton from Ingleside, Texas. Just like to say thank you. That was an incredibly moving poem to begin with. It really shows us that even in the darkest hour, there's potential hope for some kind of joy to still be sparked, even though we can't see it at the time. We know it's there, and that's what this really brings to me. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. And I completely agree with you. You know, it sometimes gets lost on Reformed Jews because we don't usually have daily worship services in our congregations. But in a traditionally observant congregation, you would know that Tisha B'Av is the only morning of the year when traditionally the talit is not worn at all. And then on Tisha B'Av afternoon, not only do people traditionally put on a talit, they even put on tefillin, which is not worn on the afternoon of any other day of the year, as a symbol that this day of darkness and mourning offers in its close a sense of uplift, that we can't just hear and feel the darkness of Tisha B'Av. We have to have some moment of redemption that also comes out of this day, that there is a new birth that is promised associated with even the darkest day of the Jewish year. I want to thank you all for being part of this nationwide community of Reformed congregations coming together for Tisha B'Av tonight. Thank you all so much.
Echad, you arms of Yishnei haketem hatov, tishtapelna avnei kodesh berosh uchutzot. B'nei Tzion, Akarim, Amsulaim, Bapas, Echa, Nekshevu, Leniv Lecheres, Maseh, Yedeyotzer, Gam Tainim, Aletzushad, Hineku, Gurehen, Bat Ami Leachzar, Kenim, Bamidbar, Davak Leshon Yonek, Echiko Betzama, Olalim Shalu Lechem, Horeis in Lahem.
My name is Rabbi Elizabeth Bahar. So I'm very honored to be with you this evening from Macon, Georgia. And I wanted to share a few thoughts about Tisha B'Av and ask that I be able to share my screen with you. I'm not sure if I can yet. So what I wanted to start, or maybe I can, forgive me. Story. So what I wanted to start off was by thinking simply about that we've heard so frequently this evening that Tisha B'Av is about the self-destructive behavior, which according to tradition brought about the destruction of the Jewish community, the destruction of the temple, all based on baseless hatred for one another. And that the entire Jewish world was torn apart through factionism and partisan rivalries. So that by the time the General Titus arrived to quell the rebellion, the Jewish community was beyond divided, and it was impossible for them to once again reunite. But I still think much can be learned, of course, through the dangers of zealotry, factionalism, and baseless hatred. We've had over 2,000 years to contemplate what does it mean to have our temple destroyed? What does it mean to cease to engage in animal sacrifices as a means for worship, and to recognize that as a result of the destruction, we are somewhat disassociated in body and spirit from the earth, where we once engaged in a tremendous amount of sacrificial behavior through agriculture, we no longer do. So that was absolutely something that was lost. We've lost other parts of our Judaism. It's become absolutely decentralized, in that people find it easier, more convenient to pray in a variety of congregations around the world or in Zoom rooms across North America this evening. It does seem a little strange after 1967 to intone a prayer that still describes the city that is mourning and in ruins, despised and desolate, when in fact, we have started to reunite in a sense. We have two strong Jewish global centers, one in Israel and one in North America. Yet we can see that the concept and idea that many of us had prayed for of peace is receding among factionalism as it continues to grow in the Jewish world in Israel. So I still think that there are three lessons, and I've kind of hinted at one or two of them that Tisha B'Av can teach us. And then I'm going to get into two different readings this evening. So first, one of the things and the gifts that I believe that Tisha B'Av offers is to remind us that just like on Passover, where we contemplate that we were slaves that left Egypt, we have to act as if we ourselves were experiencing the destruction of our community to walk through that loss, which I think is one of the reasons why many rabbis wanted to tag on the Holocaust remembrance to Tisha B'Av as well. Secondly, based on Rambam's teachings, the Tisha B'Av was observed while the Second Temple still stood. What were they observing or doing? They were mourning the First Temple and recognizing that it could, in fact, happen again unless things are designed to stop it. We could watch as we are the disintegration of the Jewish world. We can see that our disassociation with the environment is leading to furthering climate change. But finally, I think one of the other lessons that Tisha B'Av offers is more than simply commemorating the destruction of the first and second temples and offering a conversation of tragic episodes throughout Jewish history. It's not just that the temple per se or the desolation of Jerusalem is an animating force, but the day is really about connecting with tragedy in history. So in order that we keep Judaism alive, it's for us to hopefully grasp and take responsibility and ownership to redirect us toward a positive future. And that end, I want us to just look at this story here. And I learned it and I couldn't find where I learned it, but here there's a tale the rabbis told of messianic redemption, that on the very day the temple burned, the baby Mashiach was born into the world and then hidden away until we were really ready. So when we take ownership and responsibility for our contributions into the destruction, then into all of our episodes of destruction, and we understand to break negative patterns that we need to change ourselves, then maybe the Messiah will come. And I want to share the second slide, which I'm not going to get into all of it. I just want to be very conscious of time. But we read here about the destruction, the desolation, and the pain. But I want to end that there's also a tremendous opportunity for joy, that just like the phoenix comes and is born through ashes, many things can be born, but they only can be born after suffering. And so joy comes out on the 9th of Av because they mandated mourning. Then in this time and in the future, the Holy One will make it into a holiday. As it says, I will turn their mourning into joy and will comfort them and make them rejoice from their sorrow. So while it's absolutely an opportunity for us to sit in our sorrow and mourn, it's furthering an opportunity for us to see an opportunity for true growth. It's a time for us to recognize that if we don't change our patterns of behavior, we've had all these episodes of near destruction and another one might come. We need to change what we're doing so that we can find a sense of joy. And with that, I want to close and thank you all so very much.
Ata Adonai le'olam teshev kis'acha ledor vador lama lanetzach tishkachenu ta'azvenu le'orech yamim hashivenu Adonai elecha benashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Ki immaos ma'astanu katzafta aleinu ad me'od. Hashivenu Adonai elecha menashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekadem.
Hello, everyone. It is great to be with everyone tonight. My name is Rabbi Sarah Smiley. I am in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And tonight we've talked a lot about this transition from lamenting to these moments of hope. And we just heard chanted so beautifully that moment in our text where we say, "Turn back to you, God." I want us tonight to look at a text. I'm going to share my screen that some of you may be familiar with. And it is the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. So Kamsa and Bar Kamsa comes from the Babylonian Talmud in Masechet Gittin. And this tractate happens to be about divorce. But like great rabbis, we go on tangents and try to decide what other things we can talk about when talking about one specific subject. So the Mishnah explores the question of buying a field from a couple who is divorcing, and in particular, how this might have been affected by the circumstances during what we're talking about tonight, the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans. So the Gemara in this section poses the question of why the Romans were destroying Jerusalem in the first place. And it brings us to this story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. There was a certain man whose friend was named Kamsa and whose enemy was named Bar Kamsa. He once made a large feast and said to his servant, "Go bring me my friend Kamsa." The servant went and unfortunately mistakenly brought him his enemy Bar Kamsa. The man who was hosting the feast came and found Bar Kamsa sitting at the feast. The host said to Bar Kamsa, "That man is the enemy of that man. That is, you are my enemy. What then do you want here? Arise and leave." Bar Kamsa said to him, "Since I have already come, let me stay and I will give you money for whatever I eat and drink. Just do not embarrass me by sending me out." I want you to think about that for a moment. The enemy says, "Please don't embarrass me." Story continues. The host said to him, "No, you must leave." Bar Kamsa said to him, "I will give you money for half of the feast. Just do not send me away." The host said to him, "No, you must leave." Bar Kamsa then said to him, "I'll give you money for the entire feast. Just let me stay." The host said to him, "No, you must leave." Finally, the host took Bar Kamsa by his hand, stood him up, and took him out. After having been cast out from the feast, Bar Kamsa said to himself, "Since the sages were sitting there and did not protest the actions of the host, although they saw how he humiliated me, learn from it that they were content with what he did. I will therefore go and inform against them to the emperor." He went and said to the emperor, "Jews have rebelled against you." The emperor said to him, "Who says that this is the case?" Bar Kamsa said to him, "Go and test them. Send them an offering to be brought in honor of the government and see whether they will sacrifice it." The emperor went and sent with him a choice 3-year-old calf. While Bar Kamsa was coming with the calf to the temple, he made a blemish on the calf's upper lip. Therefore, when Bar Kamsa brought the animal to the temple, the priest would not sacrifice it on the altar since it was blemished. The blemish notwithstanding, the sages thought to sacrifice the animal as an offering due to the imperative to maintain peace with the government. Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos said to them, if the priests do that, people will say that blemished animals may be sacrificed as offerings on the altar. The sages said, if we do not sacrifice it, then we must prevent Bar Kamsa from reporting this to the emperor. Sages thought to kill him so that he would not go and speak against them. Rabbi Zechariah said to them, if you kill him, people will say that one who makes a blemish on sacrificial animals is to be killed. As a result, they did nothing. Bar Kamsa's slander was accepted by the authorities, and consequently the war between the Jews and the Romans began. Rabbi Yochanan says, the excessive humility of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos destroyed our temple, burned our sanctuary, and exiled us from our land. So this text that we find in Talmud, I'm sure many of you right now might be thinking about not the exact story, but similar moments in your life where maybe you showed up to a dinner party and someone who is not your friend was there and how you needed to act. Or maybe someone showed up to your house invited by someone else and you did not want them there. Think for a moment what you did in that situation. So when these stories come up, I have a few questions that I'd like to pose. I'm going to invite you to put comments in the chat if you'd like to do that, or if you'd like to unmute yourself or share any comments. And I will also say I happen to be with some of my congregants here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So if any of you want to offer any comments, I will be able to turn the computer around so all of these lovely people can see the lovely faces I am looking at as well. But I want you to think about who's at fault here. At what point, if a different action was done, could this story have changed? Were any good decisions made? The first thing I go to is what lessons of leadership can we learn from this? The enemy was worried about being embarrassed. And many of us know that in Jewish tradition, if you embarrass one in public, it is as bad as if you killed someone. Is there such a thing as being overly ethical? Kamsa appears to have nothing to do with this story since he never even got the invitation, yet his name is on the story. Does that ever happen for us in modern day life? Someone's name gets attached to something, even though they had absolutely nothing to do with it. And does that change that person's reputation? You know, I was not there. I did not know Kamsa or Bar Kamsa. But if I was Kamsa, would not want to be attached to this story. Let me check our chat. If anybody has any comments. Some more things to think about. Did I skip questions? No. So Rabbi Zechariah here seems to be a perfectionist. There's many rabbis on this Zoom right now. Many of us can probably relate. What would he say were the benefits of this approach? What do you think he would say are the dangers of perfectionism? And then there's this other way of looking at Rabbi Zechariah. Is he religiously cautious in this moment? When do we think that might be a valuable trait? And when might we need to push that tendency aside? So I'm curious if anybody either wants to unmute, share some thoughts about this story. Thank you to those who are writing in the comments.
Hello, this is Joe Pendleton from Ingleside, Texas. Thank you, Rabbi, for this story. That was very fantastic. It seems that this is a good lesson in tolerance when somebody makes a mistake. So really the mistake was made on the person who delivered the invite to the wrong Kamsa. And really a little bit of grace could have gone a long ways in the beginning if he'd have just if the host would have just said, hey, whoops, my bad, go ahead and have something to eat, and we'll fix this later. That might have helped a lot.
Absolutely. And I think, thank you for sharing. So this is about a feast and an enemy, but we have moments in our lives where things happen, either they're outside of our control or they're inside of our control, and we react really quickly. And sometimes there's this domino effect that leads to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And we've talked tonight already about this idea of sinat chinam, baseless hatred. And it is connected to this story. And what would the story look like, though, if we flip that? Instead of saying baseless hatred, we say baseless love. Many of us have preconceived notions, I think, about people, and that, unfortunately, even in modern day, translates to, that phrase, judging a book by its cover, judging a person just because we heard something about them. That's kind of baseless hatred. And how do we put that down? How do we suppress that in ourselves and turn it into this idea that we should start the opposite? No matter what we've heard about a person, no matter what we've seen about a person, how do we baselessly love the people around us? And then I just want to end, oh, please.
This is Donna from Michigan. And there's no place for hatred. Not if we accept each other as being equally created in the image of God. Therefore, we should be accepting each other. And even if the wrong person showed up at that gathering, instead of making a fuss about it should have been bypassed and continued on with what the people had gathered for. And so much else would not have happened. It's giving and caring and how we respond to each other that makes the most difference.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Someone wrote in the comments that nowhere in the story does it tell us why they were enemies in the first place. So I wonder if that would change some of our perceptions of the story, or if there's even a place in the world we live in today that we can even make our enemy, maybe not our friend, but a person we're able to share a meal with. And I know I am out of time, but I want to just end with this last question, this thought. The rabbis included this story in the Talmud about themselves. Why would they do that? And I wanted to end with that because I want us to think about the importance of sharing our full selves with people, the good, the bad, the ugly, the sad, the exciting. And maybe if we are able to share our full selves with people, then those are the moments where we will feel more unified and a little bit less divisive, and hopefully then one day have no hate in our world. Thank you all so very much. So exciting to be with people from all over the country. And thank you for learning together.
Erev Tov, everyone. Good evening. I am Rabbi in Cantor, Mika Simmerly, along with Rabbi Farb and Rabbi Marias, who introduced themselves momentarily. I'd like to welcome you to the service part of our Tisha B'Av commemoration. And let us begin with a very short nigun. It goes like this.
As we've concluded our Tisha B'Av study portion, we spent this evening commemorating and honoring the memory of so many tragedies that we as a Jewish people have endured, including the destruction of our first and second temples. When our Talmudic sage, Rabbi Ami's students would finish their studies, they would say to each other, "May you see your world in your lifetime. May your eyes sparkle with the light of Torah and your face shine like the brilliance of the heavens. May you speak words of wisdom, and may the deeds of righteousness, that the righteousness you do, fill your body with joy. And may your feet hurry to hear the words of the Ancient One who sets the cycles in motion." May we all be blessed as we join together in prayer, as we thank God for the opportunity that we've had to learn from each other. In a moment, we'll ask you, we're going to post a link, and the link is to a word cloud. The word cloud will enable you to share how you're feeling, how you're reacting, an idea. I'm going to post that link into the chat now, and as we continue through the service, feel free to add your ideas, add your feelings, and then we'll see the word cloud at the end. As we continue, we always feel blessed to be both students and teachers.
Debbie Friedman wrote this beautiful rendition of Kaddish de Rabbanan, a blessing for our teachers. I invite you to sing, of course, while muted, and join us. For our teachers and their students, and the students of their students, we ask for peace and loving kindness, and let us say Amen. And for those who study Torah here and everywhere, may they be blessed with all that they need, and let us say Amen. We ask for peace and loving kindness, and let us say Amen. We ask for peace and loving kindness, and let us say Amen.
And on this day of Tisha B'Av, above all we remember, we are those who have seen desolation. The crafted stones shatter to rubble, the holy places filled with trash, the sacred vessels debased for informers' hire. The love labor of artisans endowed by heaven melted down for the wages of the courtesan, battered babies and savaged elders. The temple becomes a den of jackals and thieves. And the shackled princes of Judah endlessly trudging through the blazing plains of Babylon, bearing in sacks sewn from Torah scrolls, strips, a burden of rock and rubble.
The psalmist wrote in Psalm 137, by the waters of Babylon, we lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. Don McLean put it to music. Some of you may recognize this from Slichot services that are coming up really, really fast. By the waters of Babylon, we lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. By the waters of Babylon, we lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion.
First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me.
On Holocaust memorials, it's very often that we sing Ali, Ali, oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. And David Zehavi from Israel put this timeless melody. I'll sing first in Hebrew and then in English. Eli, Eli, שלא ייגמר לעולם, החול והים, רישוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם, החול והים, רישוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. החול והים, רישוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם.
our Tisha B'Av word cloud. Baseless, hopefulness, grace, peace, hatred, repair. Loss and pain. As people add words into our cloud, the ones that happen over and over become larger, emphasized by our sense of loss and pain at this moment. And as we've gathered together tonight as a Reformed community from across North America, across the world, we share that sense of loss, the sense of destruction that have happened to our people. And we hope for a return to a sense of peace, a sense of calm, a sense of wholeness for us all. As we conclude with Hashivenu, let us return. And we'll let the word cloud continue to play out as we join in this song of return and redemption.
As Rabbi Rebecca Epstein read earlier so beautifully, Eicha, chapter 5, this is Hashivenu from Eicha, chapter 5, Lamentations. And take us back, O Adonai, to yourself, and let us come back, renew our days as of old. Another piece that we sing very often during Slichot services and other times during our high holidays. On behalf of all of us, Rabbi Farb, Rabbi Rob, and myself, Rabbi Mika Simmerly, let us all end this evening with Hashivenu, and I'm sure Rabbi Mike will want to add a few other closing words. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yameinu
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight as we commemorate together Tisha B'Av. And a few thoughts that I wanted to share with you as we finish the small congregational adult learning evening. And the first is from one of my favorite writers back in Israel, from Naomi Shemer. Im Bahar chatzafta even lehakim, lo leshvachi chatzafta evanav, ki min ha'avanim ha'ele yivne u'yivane hamikdash. Im lo sharta li shir adin mizmor chadash shehu atik miyain matok midvash, shir shehu atik miyain u'matok midvash. On the mountain you planted a cedar to replace a thorn, and if on the mountain you have planted a cedar to replace a thorn, It is not vain that you have planted a sin to replace a thorn, because a temple will be built of these cedars. The mountain will be built. If you have not sung for me yet, sing for me an ancient psalm, which is older than wine and sweeter than honey. A song that is older than wine and sweeter than honey. A song which is 2,000 years old, yet new year every day. And as we started our learning for Tisha B'Av, and we went through those beautiful teachings from different rabbis all over North America, we are reminded that resilience of our people in the face of the adversity that kept us for so many centuries. And as we commemorate the temple's destruction, I believe that we need to remember that from one of the fragments of the past, we will be able to build our future. And the destruction of the temple was very important historical moment. We were moved to a new period in our history, and one in which our sacrifices would be made of prayers and songs, and rather than animals. We spoke about Sinat Chinam, the baseless hatred, and the Talmud already knew of this phenomena of Sinat Chinam, and it taught us about this destructive effect on our Jewish life. And the first chief rabbi of the state of Israel famously wrote that if the second temple was destroyed and the world with us due to baseless hatred, then we shall rebuild the third temple ourselves and the world with us with baseless love. Ahavat Chinam. And I do not personally believe in the need of the temple in Jerusalem and bringing back the sacrifices, but I do believe in Ahavat Chinam, this baseless love that can allow us to achieve anything that we would like to achieve. We just need to open our hearts and our eyes. And another favorite writers, Paul McCartney and John Lennon, and I think they really summarized this idea in the lyrics from 1967. There is nothing you can do that cannot be done. Nothing you can sing that can't be sung. Nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. It's easy. May it be God's will. Ken Yehi Ratzon. I wish you a meaningful Tisha B'Av, and thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you to my fellow colleagues, rabbis, and congregants for such a beautiful evening.
PTC 1. So you probably cannot see me, but I think you can probably hear me. I just want to do two things. One is say a huge thank you to all of my colleagues and to all of you who have joined us. I know a lot of folks are starting to sign off. This is just the beginning of Tisha B'Av, and so may each of us find opportunities to stop in the course of the day tomorrow to remember that brokenness, to think about how we might bring Sinat Chinam, to be aware of where we see that senseless hatred in the world, but also then to say, where do I bring love and kindness, that boundless love and caring? Where am I going to be a partner? We have truly partnered tonight with this wonderful program. You will see in the chat a posting by Julie Lambert, who is with us from the URJ, for future small congregation adult learning collaborations. As I said, there's a program for the month of Elul, and there are further programs to come. And so thank you. I really can't say thank you enough to my colleagues, and don't worry about the camera. Nope, they almost found me. I can't say thank you enough to everybody for bringing this really, truly incredible program together. Thank you so much, everyone. I don't want to say Laila Tov. I don't want to say everybody have a good night. It is the night of Tisha B'Av, but may you have a night of kavod, of feel the weight of this night, feel the weight of these teachings, and find a way to bring the power of what we've experienced into the world. As we say, Amen, and as my